how do you feel on the days where, yeah, you might have like a productive day, but you just don't get around to doing anything musically or creative? Do you feel like something, like you missed something that day sometimes?
I mean, definitely at times, just because I know that every now and then I sort of catch myself sort of remembering that like for a while I basically did just music for like, yeah, full time all week plus the weekend, essentially.
Okay.
But that was also when like the cost of living was a lot lower because I was living in Germany, so it wasn't really that big of a deal.
Sure.
So I mean, it can get frustrating for sure. But I try to balance that out by just when I actually have the time, just really focusing on what I want to get done, and then just really getting that stuff done. I think that's what really helps, and not sort of just sort of going into it just from like a blank slate, but like working on projects specifically that I know I can get done in a certain amount of time.
Yeah,
I think
that makes.
And then when I'm working from home, I often, like, if there's like time every now and then, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I'll like work on sounds for like a sample pack or something, because like making a synth patch, that's something you can easily do if you have like 5 or 10 minutes to spare, and that's something to feel good about at least.
Sure. Man, I'm excited to get into, man, your background, your musical background. And, like two things that jumped out at me as I was thinking about our conversation today. I think most recently I saw you posted something that I just thought was pretty much everything you post is really dope. The music is creative and it's really, it's good. It's always great stuff.
Well, thank you.
You're very welcome. One of the more recent ones, I should have probably listened to it right before this, but it just had such a unique, I think I commented something about polyrhythm, because it had some weird, like different drums going on. So I really enjoyed that. And then I was looking at some of your older stuff, man. And I was listening to the Final Fantasy one that you did a while ago. And I thought that was so cool, man. It's really cool for me, man. Just like, being in the music space, being in the creative space, and now, with these interviews, and now kind of hitting my stride in terms of having a little bit more of a specific type of person that I'm kind of focused on like this round, specific to like musical artists or developers and stuff. And it's people that I feel like I know before even meeting them, just from social media. And it's definitely just a real fun and just great experience, like getting to know them virtually from afar, from liking and sharing posts and stuff, and then getting to a point where, where we can kind of chop it up for a little while. So I appreciate you taking the time out today, man.
Yeah, of course. I've been really enjoying the episodes you've been putting out, especially the one with Tobias.
Nice.
Just super cool. And also some stuff that in other interviews I haven't really heard about him yet. So that was super cool, going back like all the way. So I've been really enjoying your platform. So it's great to be on here, definitely.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much. Yeah, that's a bias episode was something else, because that was a person who, I knew about obviously for a while, being a big teenage engineering guy. And having him on was definitely special. It was really special. And I always am humbled, and it's just a great feeling knowing that the amount of enjoyment I had talking to him kind of, was passed along to the other people, other viewers like yourself and others who enjoyed that. He's such a, just a personable kind of guy, just interesting background, talking about his days in the band. I forgot the name of the band, but when he was in a band and like doing stuff on the Game Boy and all that kind of stuff, it just kind of really, really resonated. So I'm glad that stuck with you. But let me jump off and just kind of start by having you introduce yourself to my viewers and just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So my name is Chris Bolt. As a producer, I go by the name Bolt, Bolt. And at this point in my life, I would call myself mostly a producer and beat maker. But throughout the years, I've been involved with pretty much every stage of the musical process. So I've been touring, I've been just recording, I've been mixing and mastering and producing and all that kind of stuff. And it sort of came in waves, where I was just touring, then I was just working in the studio, and now I'm sort of in a comfortable spot where I'm essentially focusing on production and sound design.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of the music or musical style I've kind of settled on is somewhere between like boom bap, electronica, and maybe I guess some lo-fi here and there as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the music I make is generally very synth focused, but with like hip hop attitude, if you want.
Sure. Yeah, I definitely get that vibe for sure. Those drums, you on the drums, man. Definitely some nice stuff there, man. When did you mentioned Germany? So were you born in Germany?
Yeah, I was born in a town called Bückeburg, which is sort of in the northwest of Germany.
Okay.
And then yeah, I've been living there until I was 24
Mm-hmm.
or 2015. I think that's easier
Mm-hmm.
easier to reference. So I lived there until like 2015. Then I went to Berkeley, came back, and then moved here in 2018. So
Ah,
it was a back and forth, but till now I've been living in Germany back up until 2018.
got you. Now, excuse my ignorance. Berkeley is a music school, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what did you focus on over there? What kind of stuff did you do?
So I initially started going to school for jazz bass in Germany, starting in 2011. So went there purely for a jazz bass performance and also like music education, that sort of stuff. Um, had a bunch of projects there. Also made some really cool connections. Um, and then a couple years later, found out that Berkeley essentially does worldwide auditions where you can
Wow.
essentially just audition for the opportunity to get a scholarship to go to Berkeley for any amount of time that you want, really.
Wow.
Um, it just sort of depends on how much money you have, of course,
Sure,
how
sure.
long you can actually afford to be there. Um, and so I went to their auditions in Germany and played there in 2014. Um, got accepted and got a sizable scholarship. And so like a year later, in late 2015, I went here to Berkeley, which is right around the corner, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there, just sort of because I knew I was only going to be able to stay for like a year or so, um, just did like a sample platter of all the stuff I wanted to take. So like
Mm.
film scoring and a bunch of like Pro Tools classes and a bunch
Mm-hmm.
of bass labs. And I also got to study with some of my all-time bass heroes as well, which was awesome.
Wow.
So I like studied
That's
with Victor Bailey. Victor Wooten gives clinics like every other week, essentially.
mm,
Um, and then there's also Gary Willis and Steve Bailey, and so it's crazy.
that's
The amount of
incredible.
yeah, the bass department is honestly, I don't know if there's that culmination of sort of bass legends anywhere else in the world,
Mm.
really. Um,
Wow.
but that, of course, was like the number one reason to go there. But of course, all their production classes and that sort of stuff is also amazing and far beyond what I would have been able to get back home. So I basically just sort of took advantage of
Of
all of those
course.
classes.
Wait, so was the bass guitar your your entry point into music? Like when you first started?
Not into music, because like way back when I was like 4, my parents had me go to like elementary music education, which is like glockenspiel and that sort of stuff.
Nice. Yeah.
Basic, like super basic sight reading. And then I went on to like learn keyboards. And
Ah.
then sort of I think like 2004 or so, um, basically just started playing drums and then started playing guitar and then formed a band and then we needed a bass player, so I started playing bass. I think I was like 14 at that point.
Yeah, yeah.
um and bass sort of yeah, it was sort of happened to just be the one instrument that stuck. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was like the one where from the get-go I felt like I was going somewhere or I was getting
Mm.
somewhere. um and so bass kind of stuck, and then I invested just a ton of time into it. And eventually also ended up wanting to study jazz to just basically learn as much theory wise as I can and
I
sort of
love
get
that stuff.
yeah, and get like the whole shebang of like technique and stuff. And in Germany or in Europe in general, at that point it was really only jazz where you can sort of get most of that stuff, because the like pop programs didn't really exist at that point. There were
Right,
only a
right.
handful. Yeah. And it was cool, definitely.
Man, that sounds amazing. So what's fascinating about this, Christopher, and do you prefer Christopher or Chris?
Chris.
Chris. So
Yeah.
what's fascinating about this, and one of the things that I love about it is, so I've been listening to a podcast called How I Built This on NPR,
Hmm.
and it's a guy named Guy Raz, and he interviews hundreds of, maybe he started in 2016 or 17, but hundreds of people who are like the founders, co-founders, CEOs of like every major company you could possibly
Yeah.
imagine, from 1-800 got junk to AOL to Compact Presario,
Yeah.
to Patreon, all over, like across the board. So it's very, very fascinating. And I absolutely love listening to it. I'm listening to every single episode. I'm getting so much value out of it. Um, and what I'm really like, what I set out to when I first started doing this show, what I set out to do was, I kind of realized that I've been having a lot of great conversations with people. This is like a few
Hmm.
years, several years before this show. And something kept speaking to me about the fact that everyone, it's going to sound basic or obvious, but everyone has a story. Everyone
Yeah.
has a story. And whether that the person that we're talking about is a famous person or someone who's an ordinary person, let's say ordinary in quotes, in air quotes, like me or you, our stories can be extremely powerful and interesting and inspiring and all that stuff. And so that's kind of what I love about this. Like, as you're sharing this stuff with me, these are things, of course, that I obviously wouldn't have known about you, but just kind of hearing about that journey. And I already have teed up my next question for you that I'm interested in hearing about. You mentioned an audition for Berkeley.
Hmm.
What was that experience like? Did you have to perform something for a panel of people, like American Idol or something, or what?
um I mean, it kind of like your like general music school audition, except they did it remotely. Which, I mean, at the time it was like 2014, so it wasn't quite at the point where that was super common yet, and they used to actually have people touring around, actually going to the places where they would hold auditions. But
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
because of scheduling and everything, I think that the fact that they did it remotely was kind of a new thing for them as well.
Gotcha.
um so it was essentially, yeah, the guys, I think it was like two or three people on like a monitor, and they had a pretty good mic setup essentially. But then the rest was like a normal audition. So you would, you think you would prepare basically two pieces in that case. And then and then you get like a sight reading example. And what else was there? And then they ask a bunch of questions. And then in the case of Berkeley, they also do like a follow-up interview, sort of just like quizzing you on why you think you would be a great fit for the
Mm-hmm.
school, and with sort of the intention in the back of their mind to also sort of scope out how much people actually know about the school. Like, do they actually
Sure.
care about the school, or do they
Sure.
just apply to everything and just trying to get in somewhere?
Yep. Yep.
um so that sort of thing. But yeah, so essentially the focus though is on the prepared pieces, and then the sight reading is essentially to determine, um yeah, also sort of to determine what stage you're at essentially.
Got you. So let's talk about music production a little bit. I love, love, love getting into the mind of any artist, especially someone whose stuff I really enjoy. So I want to kind of start off with just like a general conversation about sort of your process. Like, if tonight, for example, if you have time to do some stuff musically, walk us through what that process looks like for you.
So in general, when I'm just sort of when I have time to work on something for myself,
Mm-hmm.
which right now isn't that often, sadly, as you can probably tell from my Instagram. Um, but when I specifically set time aside to be like, oh, this is something I'm gonna either like post on Instagram, or just I'll just make something for myself to have whatever I'll end up doing with it. Usually it always starts with just one sound or two, maybe. So like if I feel like it, I'll just turn on the MPC and just sort of browse through my drums and start that way.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'll like pick up the instrument one
Ah,
and
yes.
put like open like reactor or something and just play a bunch of chords, see if anything with a certain kind of sound sort of sticks and feels
Sure.
cool. Um, and from there, I usually start building things around it. And since the since I did January the first time, like 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
um, I sort of also started working on that initial idea with a slightly more with a slightly more radical mindset of just being like, I have this now, I have to make it work, and if it absolutely doesn't work, I'll just delete it and do something new.
Got you.
um, and so I'll just essentially work on that one idea and maybe like chop up some loops, put it on there, take stuff out again. At some point, the initial idea might not even work anymore, but the rest is
Right.
cool. Like the
Right.
initial chord progression or something kind of sucks, but the drums are sick now. Then I'll just keep the drums and play
Yeah.
something else. Like that also happens a lot.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
and so I'll usually try and keep the flow going, even if I end up discarding the first idea. Um,
Mm-hmm.
just because I know that when I can finish something in one sitting, I'm gonna always be a lot more. I'm gonna feel a lot better afterwards um,
Mm-hmm.
than when I just sort of come up with like a 4 bar loop that is just like a chord progression on drums or something.
Mm-hmm.
I really found that I sort of need that um, those endorphins of having something done as fast
Mm-hmm.
as possible, while I'm also working on all these big projects where I do like 10 revisions on like the vocal arrangement and stuff like that, where and then once it's done, it takes like 2 months for it to even be released, that sort of stuff.
Right.
um for myself, I really enjoy making these projects really quickly and just getting them out like same day.
Fascinating. That's definitely relatable too. I can totally relate to that when you were talking about starting with one sound or one loop and you're like, okay, let me build on this. And then before you know it, you start building and then you realize that that original part just maybe doesn't even fit. So for me,
Right.
sometimes I'm like, I just like, put the slider down or mute it or whatever. And I don't like, I'm like, I don't know if I should delete it or I don't know if I might want to use it for something else or whatever. But I
Mhm.
totally can relate to that sort of mindset, that perspective, because that happens to me all the time. Do you have a specific DAW that you use, like your go-to?
It used to be Logic for the longest time, and now I go back and forth between Logic and Ableton.
Nice.
I just got Ableton like end of last year, but it's like since I've used it so heavily during January,
Yeah.
it's been super fun, and so that workflow I love for my stuff. But
Yeah.
when I'm working with like a pop artist, I usually 99% of the time end up in Logic.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
But
your
that's mainly an efficiency thing. If I had like a super beefed up machine, I would probably do that in Ableton as well. But Logic's just more efficient for my workflow.
gotcha. Okay. I'm I used to be an Ableton user. I have Ableton on my computer. That was my entry point into digital audio workstations. When I transitioned from hardware Yamaha Motif keyboard to software, I went with
Mhm.
Ableton. I have a lot of great stuff in there. But then from there, I kind of didn't like being tethered to my computer, even though I have a laptop and I could have used laptop other places. But I went the iPad route and the
Yeah.
OPZ route. And I still have like, behind me, I have like a workstation that I still use and really enjoy and stuff. That's the Roland Phantom back there. But it's yeah, I have the iPad. Oh, the point I was going to make was that Logic is rumored to be coming to the iPad. Um,
Yeah, I mean, at this point, when else would they do it?
right, right,
With the new iPad and the M1 chip and everything. So
right.
we're
You know
we're
about
all
it. Yeah.
crossing our fingers for like what, 2 weeks? It's like in
Yeah, I
two
think
weeks.
about
Yeah.
that. Yeah, a couple weeks. Yeah, yeah, for WWDC. I'm rocking with I think the third gen iPad Pro. So I think it's now
Yeah.
2 generations old. And I didn't upgrade yet, but I'm curious to see if whatever they do unveil if it's going to work with this, or if it's like you kind of really need the next chip. If so, then I will gladly sell this or give it to my wife or whatever. I'll figure it out, you know?
Yeah, but that's going to be super interesting to see, definitely.
Oh, for
um
sure.
yeah, I'm also someone who is just like glued to the screen with every keynote. So
Mm-hmm.
since like 2006
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. So, and I also used to work for them in retail for a while, so I'm
Oh, nice.
heavily
Okay.
I'm heavily invested.
There you
Yeah.
go. There you go. What do you do now for your 9 to 5?
And I'm actually a product manager at a company that makes like, how do you say, like installation cameras and lecture capture systems, that sort of stuff. So we're in
Ah,
a lot
yeah.
of higher ed institutions, corporate, and also like a lot of government and that sort of stuff. But it's,
Wow.
yeah, large scale kind of stuff. So like one order will be like 300 cameras, something like that.
Wow. Wow. How
So I
long
do
you
that
been
kind of
there?
stuff. 2 years.
Okay.
And that sort of came about because I was like, since I like, at the same time I had my first like DAW experience, which was Reason 3 back in the day, I think,
Mm-hmm.
through a friend of my mother's, and I was like 11 at that point or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
The same guy also like taught me Photoshop, and then at the same time I also got really interested into sort of visual stuff and video and all that kind of stuff. So video has always been a thing I've been doing alongside music as well, and so
Mm-hmm.
that kind of experience sort of happened to get me this job. So that was
Got
handy, I
you.
guess.
That's
But yeah,
cool. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
always been a thing I'm invested in.
Okay. Okay. That's really cool. All right. Yeah, yeah. So you know, I'm transitioning out of education now. I teach middle school math currently, and this will be my last year teaching. So
Oh
I'm
wow.
really, really diving into the deep end. Some would say or think it doesn't really feel that way with me. Like I have um I'm very excited about having this sort of open slate to kind of do what I need to do in order to be successful with the
Mhm.
music stuff and the show and the content creation stuff. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to you know, using all these education. And then I used to work at Verizon prior to that for 12
Yeah.
years. I have an engineering background. So like using all these different things and experiences I've learned to kind of help catapult, you know, the things that I'm kind of working through. So I'm looking forward. I got about, I don't know, 3 weeks left or something. And I'm excited, man. You know, I'm really
Awesome.
excited.
Yeah. I can
Yeah.
tell.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's sort of all, it can sort of all inform what you're doing like creatively too.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's also sort of enabled me to learn a bunch more stuff that I wouldn't learn otherwise. Especially with
Huge.
electronics. Like I essentially, they never had someone who could repair the cameras, so I sort of started doing that myself, and they're like pretty intricate because they're like motorized and everything.
Wow.
And so I essentially taught myself how to like completely take apart and rebuild these cameras from scratch and that sort of stuff.
Wow. That's pretty
Um,
technical. Yeah.
and so yeah, and that helped me now work on this guy right here.
And that
Work on
is,
that the 8-track tape machine back there,
oh,
that
wow.
I'm restoring right now.
Cool. Cool.
So it's cool for that kind of stuff. So it's definitely helped me get more experience and also get more insight into a little bit of like software development and sort of the whole like inner workings of integrated products and embedded systems and that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been cool to know. But cool to, yeah, just do all this kind of stuff and talk to suppliers over in Far East and that sort of stuff. Um,
Yeah.
so it's,
That's
yeah, I
great.
mean, it all comes in handy at some point. Yeah.
For sure. And I mean, having some correlation, yeah, between what you do for your career and profession and what you do creatively, like that's what it's all about. Yeah, being able to pull from those experiences. I think that's awesome. Let me ask about video games, Final Fantasy 7 or Final Fantasy 7. Yeah. You're obviously into video games. If you made a beat about that, what's your like what was your, I don't know, first system, or what did you play a lot of like growing up?
I grew up with the PS1,
Nice. Crash
definitely.
Bandicoot.
And yes, I don't remember if I had the first one, but definitely 2 and 3 I played a lot. And also like
Nice.
all three Spyro games,
Yeah. Right.
tons of Gran Turismo.
Yep. Yep.
I just remember having like way over 100 cars in both 1 and 2.
Nice. Nice. You were going in. Okay.
Yeah. And then let me think. There were a couple of other. Oh yeah, one of my favorite games is actually one that wasn't super successful, which was like Mega Man Legends 1 and 2.
Okay. Definitely heard
Were
of
like
it.
two of
Was
my
that like a
favorite games.
three? That wasn't a 3D one, or was it?
It was a three. It was like
3D?
their one foray into like a 3D open world Mega Man, and I
Gotcha.
really loved it, like the
Nice.
story and everything. Even
Yeah.
though the first one was very rushed, and so they
Okay.
put all the plot in the second one.
Okay.
But yeah, I still play through that game every now and then.
Nice.
So,
That's cool,
and
man.
then yeah, PS2 of course, more Gran Turismo.
Yeah. Yeah. Every generation. Did you,
Yeah,
so
and
Mega Man, did you play, have you ever played Mega Man 2 before for Nintendo?
actually, my best friend had an NES, and we played a ton of Mega Man 3 actually,
3.
because that was
Okay.
like the
Yeah.
one he had, which I also
Okay.
really love the theme song of.
Uh-huh.
If you don't know that, that one's actually really sick. But
I'm
yeah,
gonna have
and
to
there we play
look that
lots of
up.
Mega Man 3, yeah, Super Mario Brothers 1 through 3, and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. That's cool. Yeah, yeah. I played a ton of Mega Man 2 back in the day, and I know 2 and 3 are considered by most like the best in the entire series. I played a little bit of 3, but the music in 2, and I'm sure the music in 3 as well, to your point, it's just like it's outstanding how
So good.
intricate the music is at a time when the technology wasn't there. I mean, I can listen to some of that stuff, and I'm just like, yo, this brings me. I was given an example to someone and saying how, we don't have any time machines available to us yet, but the closest thing to it, maybe aside from looking at home videos or something like that, that really
Yeah.
brings back memories. The second closest thing to it, man, is hearing music that you have heard from 10, 20, 30 years ago. It's such a powerful thing, man. I
Yeah,
was I
absolutely.
was going through some sheet music with the Mega Man 2's theme song in different stages and stuff, and I'm looking at the composer, and I'm like, man, this person wrote a intricate, like in-depth kind of thing that's really, really fascinating.
And also the way to like realize that on the hardware too, because it's all there was no I know that there was like tracker software for the like Genesis and stuff that
Mhm.
people use to program stuff. I don't know if that even existed for the NES. I think a lot of
Mm,
it was like, here's the track, now program it in code.
right. That's
Plus
fan.
you had to like, for like the drums had to like switch with like the bass on the same track and that sort of stuff. It's
Hmm.
wild.
Yeah, it is wild thinking about it, right?
Yeah. Same for software too. It's like we're at a point now where we don't have to have workarounds for everything. We can just
Uh-huh.
pile processes on top of each other and it'll work. Whereas back then you had to budget everything from like the
Right.
music to the visuals. Same with recording too. It's not like if you have 8 tracks on tape, that's all you're getting. And to get more, you can dump that onto 2 tracks on another tape, but then those two
Right.
won't ever change again. So
Right. 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 Man, that is really fascinating. Yeah, yeah. I hadn't even, I guess, thought about it to that level, but it does make sense. With those limitations, they had to, use every trick that's available to them to allow to be able to, create the sounds that are now looked at, as iconic.
yeah, absolutely. And so like it's the music is equally as impressive as it was to even get it onto the out of the system in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And even what some people managed to do on like the PC speaker with like some early DOS games where it was literally one track, like it was
Yeah.
monophonic, and they made it sound like there was drums and chords and stuff. It's just
Yeah.
wild.
That is, yeah, that's so cool, man. Let me ask, I got two more questions for you.
Mhm.
So one of them, well, I'll ask them. First one is I want to know a little bit about your musical goals. What are like my one of my musical goals is I want to place my music in a video game, in a cartoon or a show, like that type of medium is where I see my stuff fitting the most. What's one of the things that you, or several, however you prefer to answer, but what's like
Mhm.
one of the things that you're working towards musically that you'd consider a success once you get there?
I'd say for my own music, I've over the last couple of years, I've really realized that one of my sort of biggest ambitions is to have my music be part of one form of or some form of storytelling that's not just musical.
Mm-hmm.
Be that video games or art installations or short films or whatnot.
Sure.
But I do really love the whole that whole thing of music tying into a greater narrative, be that through visual storytelling or something else.
Yeah.
Um, where the music also the music sort of serves as a catalyst to remember all of that too that you've just seen or witnessed, because music is tied so closely to our emotions
Mm-hmm.
too. So if you
Mm-hmm.
hear like the theme song from a movie, it'll immediately bring back the
Mm-hmm.
moments of the movie you loved most,
Yeah.
that sort of
Yep.
stuff. So I think that's one of my biggest ambitions, definitely, is being involved in other media of storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And then ever since I started sound designing more and working on sample packs and loops, I also just want to have the like sounds and everything, the sounds and loops I design be used by people to create awesome music. Like that's always a
Mm-hmm.
super inspiring experience to see
Mm-hmm.
people put sounds and loops and samples that you've created to use in ways that you haven't even thought about.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just, yeah, that's just a super amazing thing to witness.
I
Definitely.
love that,
So
man.
yeah, and I would love to be able to dedicate more time to music again.
Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So while
That's
while I like the job, eventually I would like to have more time to do this stuff.
definitely. Yeah. 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 So your loops that you mentioned just now, is this a thing where I've checked your website out and I see that you have, content on there available. So is this one of those things where, because it's something I want to get into, I want to learn a little bit
Mhm.
about, where you have a sort of repository of loops? I guess let's focus on that first, because the sound design aspect I am interested in. I just haven't, I don't have really any experience on that. So
Mhm.
I don't really spend time on that end so much, but I have a ton of melodic loops and things that could be starting points, right, for songs.
Yeah.
So like, I guess for me and for anyone out there listening, how did how do you, how would you recommend and how did you go about um putting those for sale, and like what does that process look like?
Um, I mean, most of them have started with some sort of initial idea, or in the case of parallel universe breaks, for example, it was me working on a specific processing chain to make something sound like super authentically like a 60s record, that
Mm-hmm.
sound of stuff, where I was like, oh, I can actually make a ton of drum breaks that sound like super authentic but are not like jacked from some sort of record, so they're all
Mm-hmm.
royalty free.
Yeah.
So that was just an idea that came about while messing around. And then there's others like the bass loop and sample pack that I put out as my first one, where I was just essentially like, oh, I really feel like some people who make like boom bap and lo-fi and that sort of stuff could do with some super clean and sort of authentic R&B type bass lines.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just started essentially working on the concept and yeah, recording a bunch of loops, bunch of one shots. But I like to start with an idea first, and I
Okay.
keep a notebook of those
Yeah.
around to see where we're at and that sort of thing. But yeah, I like to start with an idea, see if that's been done or to what extent that's been done already, and seeing what I can bring to the table that's different from the packs that are around. Because like if you're just making like a MIDI pack or something, you really have to put yourself out there to differentiate it from something
Mm-hmm.
else, from
Right.
the thousands that are already around. So
Right. Right.
I like to find some sort of niche that's not super like it hasn't been explored all that much yet.
Right.
Like I'm working on a pack with, or two packs actually, with two really good friends of mine who are also amazing session musicians. Um, and they're also going to be like super organic kinds of things, with people who are just super proficient players.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and we're sort of working together where I contribute, but I also do the processing and that sort of stuff. But yeah, we or I like to essentially approach it from an angle of what can I bring to the table that I haven't heard yet in those packs that are around, essentially.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. What's gonna differentiate you from the noise? No pun intended. Well, it's not really noise, but kind of is, right? Yeah. Set you apart and make you stand out for the best possible way. I definitely like that for sure. All right, let me ask one more question and then we're going to
Mhm.
wrap up. So, last question is a question I ask a lot of my guests. So, musically, if you have a chance to go to a concert with 5 artists that are going to perform of all time, who would you like to be at your concert?
Yeah, that's interesting. I would say Kendrick Lamar,
Nice,
Jay Dilla,
nice. Yeah.
Flying Lotus.
Ah,
I would definitely put Madlib in there as well.
nice. Okay.
Let's make it the count.
The
Because I
Count.
think that would be a sick lineup.
I'm not familiar with them. The Count is a group
Producer.
producer. Okay, I gotta look him up. What genre
Uh I'd
or
say
mix?
yeah, I'd say like boom bap, but also sometimes more house kind of stuff.
Okay.
And then also like very Jay Dilla inspired, I guess.
All right. All right. I got to check that out. Yeah, I love asking that question because more often than not, there's at least one artist in the mix that I've either never heard of or don't know much about. One of my actually, I think my very first guest actually um, had Flying Lotus. It was him and his
Mhm.
wife. They have a company um, together and actually music education kind of company. They're doing some
Yeah.
really cool stuff called Point Motion Control. Um, and yeah, they mentioned how much they love Flying Lotus, and so I listen. I've heard that's a single person, right? Single
Yeah.
person producer. Yeah. When they mentioned, I've heard of him before. I didn't know much really anything about the music, but it's like jazz kind of inspired hip hop or something, right? That type of feel.
Yeah, but also yeah, super out there. I don't know if you've heard the Yasuke soundtrack that he just put out
Nah,
for like
is it good?
for a new for a new series that he just scored. It's
Oh,
that's a lot more like electronica, like
okay.
a lot of like analog synths and that sort of stuff, but of course Thundercats on there as well.
Ah,
And he
nice.
also produced all the Thundercat stuff, or at least like has part in producing like
Yeah,
most of
involved with
Thundercat's
it.
things. And Thundercat also plays on a ton of his stuff too. So,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he was also involved in To Pimp a Butterfly, and I think a bunch of Kendrick projects past that as well. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, I mean, he's as a producer definitely someone someone I really look up to, both for his his like very unmistakable sound, but also
Mhm.
his ability to do something completely different for every
Mhm.
project, and you still recognizing that it's him.
Wow,
And also just
powerful.
for the fact that they essentially gave him an entire radio station in GTA 5.
Oh,
That's
did they
also pretty
really?
sick.
I didn't
Yeah.
know that. Wow, that is really cool. All right, so
Yeah.
yeah, I got to spend. I only listened to a little bit. I forget the name of the album that they recommended. It certainly wasn't the one you mentioned because this was several months ago, so it probably wasn't out at the time. But I will definitely check that out.
Yeah. I think it just dropped the other day, really. I just saw it pop
Recent.
up on my release radar.
All right, nice. I may actually go upstairs and wash the dishes and go put it on right now. As a matter of fact. Yeah, just thanks so much, man. It was really nice meeting you, and I was about to say in person. This is the closest, like the best we're gonna get for now. But
For
I'm
now, yeah.
excited about the future, man. Definitely eventually, who knows, we can be in the same room working on something together down the road once things open back up. Working on some Mega Man inspired music or something. Because I think we definitely relate on that. I never put it the eloquent way that you put it, but when you said, intertwining your music with storytelling, I always say, "Oh, I see it," and which is it's the same thing, right? Seeing it in a video game or something. But I
Yeah, the idea
never.
is the same. Yeah.
It's a very very close match for sure, for sure. And yeah, when you were, I don't know, did you watch Game of Thrones? Did you like that, or did you watch any of that back in?
No, I've actually been able to stay away from it for now, but we'll see.
Eventually, you'll see. Maybe yeah.
To be fair, I was kind of weird about TV because like Netflix wasn't a thing in Germany really for the longest time. So I
Yeah.
like when I came to Berkeley, I was like, I've never watched like any TV series really.
Got you.
And
Oh
so like my
wow.
wife got me into it slowly a little bit, but I
Yeah,
still have a still have a hard time wanting to finish something.
I got you. Nah,
Yeah.
I totally get that. You were mentioning about, yeah, hearing a certain sound or song and it associating it with a picture. I was just thinking, I forget the name of the
Yeah.
song itself, but I was just thinking of a scene, maybe one of the saddest or craziest scenes in the entire
Mhm.
series. And the music that's playing there, like I'll never, anytime I hear even those first few notes, I'm like, oh my goodness, here we go. This
Yeah.
is it's reminding me of this sad and just relentless situation. And that's so powerful that music can do that. It really
Yeah.
is. It really
It
is.
actually reminded me you saying that. Have you played the first Red Dead?
I have played some of it. I haven't beat it, but I played
Okay. Have
like
you
half of it about.
Okay, so have you been in Mexico already? Or
I don't even remember because I played it when it was first out, which was like 10 years or 8 years ago.
oh yeah.
So yeah, I don't even I'm gonna say probably not.
Okay, then
But
maybe
you
I
could I'm not gonna play it, so you can tell you whatever you're gonna say. I'm not
Okay,
gonna
no,
go back.
there's this like in the second half of the story you essentially end up in Mexico because the story
Mhm.
is that you're going to be involved with like the revolutionaries and stuff. Um but the moment you arrive and you're sort of there's this really long passage where you just ride to the next town that takes a good 4 or 5 minutes, which
Uh-huh.
Red Dead is amazing at anyway. Like Red Dead 2 was just mind blowing to me still.
Uh-huh.
Um, and you get on your horse and you start riding, and this Jose Gonzalez song starts playing just without and nothing. You just ride there,
Ah,
and
love
it
it.
is still to this day for me one of the best uses of music in any game I've ever seen. It's
Wow.
that good.
Wow. That
And I mean, the second one has a similar moment with a song that D'Angelo wrote for that game, which is also
wow.
amazing. Um,
That's really cool, man.
but yeah, I mean, their soundtracks have always been ridiculous, and plus they have amazing artists on them anyway. But yeah, that's yeah, that was one of the moments where I realized, man, I really want to be more involved with storytelling
Yes.
with my
Yeah.
music and not just have my music out there. So yeah,
Yeah.
let's hope.
Wow. Yeah. More than hope, man. Let's make that happen, man. Because we have a sort of burning, I don't know if it's burning in both of us or not, but it definitely feels
Oh
that way.
yeah.
Like I definitely want that to happen. And we'll make it happen. You know, it takes some strategy and some just work. So to be honest, like it takes work. It's like the creative stuff is the fun stuff, but like figuring out how to network with people. Like for example, one thing I thought of the other day is Instagram. Okay, we're on Instagram. We're using hashtags. We're using hashtags that are musical, that are related to our audience. That's how I discover your stuff, and vice versa. But what about the filmmaker hashtags, or what about exploring these
Right.
other, or like sometimes throwing them in, you know what I'm saying, like animators and things like that, storytelling, and like expanding the horizon away from just music but like the visual stuff. I've been trying to do that a little bit in network, and it's even game developers, for example, like meeting people who
Yeah.
are kind of like us in our sphere, in terms of our sphere of influence, but make video games, or develop video games and stuff like that. um let's keep it going, man. I think I'm feeling inspired now just talking about it. So yeah, let's,
Oh, same. Yeah.
yeah, keep each other honest. And next time I have you on, man, we'll be talking about where we're at, among that journey, along that journey.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Excellent, excellent. Well, yeah, like I said, man, definitely appreciate everything, man. Appreciate you coming on. It was a lot of fun chatting with you, and have a
Thank you so much
wonderful
for
rest
having
of the
me.
night. And if you want to share anything with the audience, you can feel free to, actually.
I think what I'd say to anyone getting into production now is and I think most people tend to say that these days with social media being around and everything, but
Mhm.
just be mindful of the kind of stuff you consume on a regular basis and how much that can make you feel insignificant to a degree, because that can just be really destructive if you just see all these people sort of doing the stuff that you want to do, but you feel like they're better than you and that sort of stuff. I think it's really important to remember that everyone has to come from somewhere and no one gets where they are overnight. And just be aware that you need to stay in touch with your mental health along the way, no matter how much time or skill you have to make everything happen. I think it's important that you need to realize that it's a journey that isn't something you can just sort of achieve overnight. And
Mhm.
yeah, just don't compare yourself to others.
Man, that's powerful. That's gonna, you can expect to see that on Instagram right there. That's a sound bite. We call that a sound bite in the business. Yeah, that's great, man. I appreciate that. And that means a lot to hear that. And I can absolutely echo exactly what you said. I think that's so important. And I think that just like most important things or most profound things, I think it is important for people to hear that and be reminded of that regularly. Some people may already know it. A lot of people probably don't, but wherever you're at there, it's important to kind of be reminded, because that is, there's so much benefit from social media. I wouldn't have met you otherwise, and a lot
Right.
of other people, but it can be debilitating if you're, constantly comparing. So yeah, that's huge. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and like everyone's guilty of it at different times in their lives, and I
Yeah.
have been too. So it's just important to know that that's a thing that we do as humans.
Hmm.
But it's not going to help us in the long run, really.
Right.
So it's
Right.
important to distance yourself from it when you notice it happening.
Yes. Well said, man. Well said. All right, my man. So have a wonderful rest of the night. I'll definitely
You
be in
too.
touch with you to let you know when we can expect to do that Thursday thing, and we'll go from there, man. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.
Awesome. My pleasure. Have a good one.
All right, man.
All right.
Take care.
Later. Later.